Hello, tributes, and welcome back to another episode of Ashes of the Hunger Games, Two Ashes and Blood. Now, before I begin, I would like to answer a question that I saw on one of my posts recently, asking me basically where the Ashes series went. That's basically the long and the short of what the question was, cause y'all hadn't received an episode of Ashes since I think late late into probably since probably earlier this year or late last year. Probably. I forget exactly when y'all received an episode, but that was the last time y'all received an Ashes of the Hunger Games episode, like the original series, not the new Hunger Games. So I want to be 100% transparent with you on why y'all haven't seen a new episode yet. That is because I'm planning on basically alternating between this series and the other one. Basically, what I mean by that is basically I am going to do the first new Hunger Games today. Then the next upload that'll happen will be the 231st through 240th Hunger Games in the original Ashes of the Hunger Games series, and then I will flip flop back over to this one and do the second new Hunger Games, followed by the 241st through 250th games in the Ashes series until either one of these series is done or until I get to the second to last games of this series, because the last games of this series will definitely spoil a lot of victors if I haven't ended the Ashes series yet by that point. So I'm probably going to temporarily end Two Ashes of Blood at the 299th New Hunger Games, and wait to do the 300th until Ashes has ended. So until I get to that point, I will completely... So basically, after the 299th New Hunger Games in this series, if I haven't completed Ashes yet, then I'm going to completely focus on Ashes until that is done, and then we can go back to this and do the 300th New Hunger Games with all of that. So with all of that being said, today we are going over the first New Hunger Games. I hope you all will enjoy it. And yeah, the next video I upload will be, the next episode in the Ashes series, so I hope you guys will enjoy that too. But without further ado, let's get into the first New Hunger Games. The first New Hunger Games took place in the year 1. After the reintroduction of the Hunger Games, many districts didn't like the fact that there were now 15 career districts. District X was among the districts that hated this the most. It was determined that this year, in order to remind the districts of those they had lost prior, the district partners of the mentors would be brought back to life. All of these district partners would then have to choose to compete in the first New Hunger Games or have 3 tributes reaped in their place. To the surprise of Panem, all the district partners of the mentors would choose to compete. This would mean that the normal reapings would have to take place, the normal reapings wouldn't have to take place. Although the normal reapings would take place with no volunteering allowed in the career districts in order to not raise suspicion amongst the victors. In District X, Callista, victor of the 180th Hunger Games, and Corinne, victor of the 181st Hunger Games, stood on the stage, being guarded by peacekeepers, told to shoot if things go sideways. Callista was up first, told to reap the female tribute. As she went to the bowl, it was immediately evident that the bowl was rigged in some way, but Callista paid no mind to it. She reached into the bowl and picked out the name of 17-year-old Desiree Janssens. When Corinne heard Desiree's name get called, his eyes widened in horror. At that point, it was evident to Callista that what was happening, and her eyes darted toward the reaping enclosures, her eyes finally landing on Bram, and her heart stopped. As Desiree stepped out into the aisle, a bittersweet smile on her face as she saw Corinne, she let a tear slip from her eye. Desiree was amongst one of the many tributes that was forced to sign the agreement in order to save their family from certain doom. As Desiree got onto the reaping stage, she hugged Corinne tightly, causing Corinne to burst into tears and hug Desiree. Meanwhile, Callista was starting to hyperventilate due to what she thought was happening. As Callista fainted, peacekeepers rushed to her side and carried her into the train, forcing Corinne to do the rest of the reapings. As Corinne walked over to the male reaping bull and, of course, picked out the name of 14-year-old Bram Aldenberg, Bram almost immediately fainted. He had willingly signed to participate in the games, but he still didn't expect this. As peacekeepers went to grab Bram, 16-year-old Angela Simon stepped out into the aisle, almost making Corinne faint as she walked towards the stage. Peacekeepers tried to stop her, but Angela correctly stated that she was going to get reaped anyways, causing the peacekeepers to back off and let her continue onto the stage. After the reapings of Desiree, Angela, and Bram, Corinne was forced to announce this trio as the tributes for District X before being forced onto the train where Callista and Bram lay asleep on the couches in the main compartment. As Corinne, Desiree, and Angela got onto the train, Corinne tried to apologize to the girls, but they just shook their heads, Angela stating that they had all chosen this, telling Corinne what the capital would have done if they hadn't decided to compete. As Callista and Bram woke up, the train was just arriving at the airport where the hovercraft that had just come from District 17 was there to pick them up. It was decided, back when Districts 17 and 18 joined the Union, that they would join the tributes from the European districts in the hovercraft to the mainland. This year, the hovercraft had already been to Districts 19, 18, and 17, in that order. They still had Districts 14A, 15A, 20, and 15B to go to in that order before they could take the tributes to the capital. As Callista, Desiree, Angela, Corinne, and Bram got onto the hovercraft, all was quiet, as they saw the competitors from the other districts, although they did receive a friendly wave from the tributes from District 19. In District 19, the reapings were preceded by a huge fire in the reaping square. The firefighters in the district were quick to react. Unlike Districts X and 0 through 18, Districts 19, 20, and 21 didn't have any past tributes, so the reapings in these districts would go on like normal instead of reaping the mentors' district partners. After the fires were put out, Petra, victor of the 999th Hunger Games, and Beatty, victor of the 39th Hunger Games, stood on stage with peacekeepers guarding them. Although Petra was originally from a career district and thus didn't need guarding, Beatty wasn't from a career district and thus needed to be guarded. Petra would happily walk over to the female reaping bowl and cheerfully pluck a slip of off-white paper from the bowl. Petra would then read out the name of 13-year-old Mariposa Anderson. As he heard Mariposa's name, Beatty let a tear roll down his cheek. He knew it was possible for a 13-year-old to win, especially due to the fact that his co-mentor was 13. He just didn't believe that a 13-year-old from a brand new district would do well in the games. As Mariposa heard her name, she screamed. She looked around frantically, hoping someone would volunteer, until Beatty correctly stated that there was no volunteering this year, causing Mariposa to faint. Peacekeepers would roll their eyes before approaching the unconscious tribute and picking her up, carrying her to the train. Her small frame made it easy for one peacekeeper to carry her on his lonesome. Eventually, Beatty would continue the reapings by walking over to the male reaping bowl. He then reached in and picked out a slip of off-white paper, reading the name of 17-year-old Beetle Taylor. As Beatty read Beetle's name, he chuckled slightly at how similar their names were. As Beetle heard his name, he stepped out into the aisle. His muscular frame was one Beatty knew he could use to get Beetle sponsors. As he walked down the aisle, he definitely turned heads, most in admiration, although one did seem like he turned his head out of anger. As Beetle got onto the stage, he flexed his muscles, causing a lot of the girls to faint, including Petra, causing Beatty and Beetle to chuckle. As Beatty announced Mariposa and Beetle as this year's tributes from District 19, cheers erupted through the reaping enclosures, mostly due to the fact that the people who were cheering weren't reaped themselves. As Petra was carried onto the train by peacekeepers behind Beatty and Beetle, the peacekeepers could hear Beatty already talking strategy with Beetle, including the fact that District 19 should ally with District 3, considering they were both smart and District 5 had recently defected to the careers. Beetle would agree to this, although his mind ran rampant with thoughts about the fact that the District 3 tributes could be liabilities in the arena. Petra and Mariposa would wake up shortly after the train left the station. At that time, Beatty and Beetle would inform the pair on where they were going, with Beetle stating that they were going to be the first people on the hovercraft before meeting the District 18 tributes with fake enthusiasm. As the train got to the airport, the hovercraft was already there, waiting on the tributes. Mariposa and Beetle looked between each other before exiting the train onto the tarmac. Mariposa was the first onto the hovercraft, followed by Beatty, then Beetle, then Petra. Petra had been caught up talking with her peacekeeper friend, and that's why she was late. On the hovercraft, the group from 19 sat in silence until Zora, victor of the 1021st Hunger Games, Noah, victor of the 1024th Hunger Games, Bodana from 18, and Hinata from 18 came onto the hovercraft. Seeing as Zora was Croatian, Noah was Swiss, Bodana was Ukrainian, and Hinata was Japanese, the 19s found it very hard to understand the 18s. But they still tried. Although they got nowhere with understanding this group, they did a little better with the 17s. Beatty and Petra immediately struck up conversations with Clara, victor of the 1023rd Hunger Games, and Wolfgang, victor of the 991st Hunger Games, chatting about what District 17 did, as Beatty had no idea. Meanwhile, Mariposa broke out of her shell around the 17s. Amelia from 17 and Albert from 17 talked for hours about what they did back in District 17 with Mariposa, while Beetle just stood there listening intently. As the District X tributes and mentors got onto the hovercraft, they were welcomed by the 19s with open arms. Callista and Corinne immediately started talking to Clara, Wolfgang, Petra, and Beatty, getting along with them well. Meanwhile, Desiree, Angela, Bram, Mariposa, and Beetle immediately struck up a conversation as well. The group decided that they would all ally with the 3s, although they also tried inviting the 17s, they declined, due to District 17's already existing alliance with Districts 14A and 15A. As the hovercraft picked up the group from 14A, Kaylee, victor of the 1004th Hunger Games, William, victor of the 940th Hunger Games, Mary from 14A, and Sterling from 14A, Amelia and Albert immediately broke away from the X's and 19s in order to talk to them. The divide in the hovercraft only got worse as they picked up the District 15A group. Renee, victor of the 950th Hunger Games, Gabriel, victor of the 1016th Hunger Games, Stephanie from 15A, and Salim from 15A. After that group was picked up, it was on to District 20, finally giving the 18s a friend in the hovercraft. Zora, Noah, Bodana, and Hinata were excited to see who would be reaped from the new career districts, causing them to turn the TV on, practically forcing all the other tributes in the hovercraft to watch. The reapings for District 20 were live at this point. In District 20, the tan skins and brunette hair made the citizens look very pretty. Eventually, everyone in the capital would comment on this, but the districts knew that no amount of prettiness guaranteed a victory. On the reaping stage stood Delphine Dubois, victor of the 92nd Hunger Games, and Cassius Heath, victor of the 1st Hunger Games, ready to pick out the names of the tributes they would mentor. District 20 was also one of the districts picked to send in an extra male tribute, meaning Cassius would have to pick out 2 names from the bowl. Up first was the females. Delphine slowly approached the reaping bowl and reached a hand in. As she pulled a slip of paper out, no one volunteered. This caught Delphine off guard at first, until she remembered that there was no volunteering allowed this year. As she unfolded the sheet of paper with the name on it, she giggled before reading the name of 14-year-old Lyric Stewart. As Lyric's name was called, the 18s in the hovercraft laughed, while the outliers just shook their heads at the 18s, feeling bad for Lyric. As for Lyric herself, when she heard her name, she actually seemed confident as she stepped out into the aisle. Her long curly brunette hair swayed from side to side as she walked towards the stage. Her smile showed her pearly white teeth, showing that she took perfect care of her teeth. As Lyric got onto the stage, she smiled and shook Delphine's hand before walking over to her spot on the stage. She would smile at the cameras as Cassius continued the reapings. Cassius would walk up to the male reaping bowl and pick out a pristine white piece of paper. He'd then clear his throat before reading the name of 13-year-old Hendrix Woods. As Hendrix heard his name, he put on a confident smirk and strode out into the aisle. His curly, jet-black hair complemented his light blue eyes surprisingly well. As Hendrix got onto the stage, he smirked at Lyric before reaching over and shaking Cassius's hand. As Hendrix shook Cassius's hand, his handshake was surprisingly firm, catching Cassius off guard. After shaking Cassius's hand, Hendrix took his spot against the wall behind Cassius. Cassius then walked back over to the male reaping bowl, picking out another piece of paper out of the bowl. He then read out the name of 17-year-old Brio Bassett. As Brio heard his name, his smile he had before the reaping grew as he stepped out into the aisle. As he walked down the aisle, Brio's curly brunette hair bounced and flowed as he walked. He would run his hand through his hair as he continued to walk, messing up his hair. He would wink at the girls as he walked past, and he would salute the boys as he walked past them. When he got onto the stage, Brio smiled and shook hands with Cassius. It was at this point that Cassius noticed just how tall this man was. Brio was an astonishing 6'7". Cassius was intimidated by Brio, but he didn't let it show, and he still shook Brio's hand firmly. Although Brio's grip was just as firm, if not more firm. After shaking Cassius's hand, Brio took his spot up against the wall behind Cassius. After the reapings of Lyric, Hendrix, and Brio, Delphine and Cassius announced Lyric Storts, Hendrix Woods, and Brio Bassett as this year's tributes for District 20. The trio was then taken to the train where they would be taken to the airport. On the train, Lyric mentions that her quinceañera was the next day, the day that the European hovercraft arrived at the capital. This would make Cassius mention that he knew a victor whose birthday was on Reaping Day, saying that he thought the victor's name was Hamish or something like that. As the train arrived at the airport, Delphine and Cassius were the first people off of the train, immediately being met by peacekeepers who grabbed Lyric, Hendrix, and Brio off of the train and put the group onto the hovercraft. On the hovercraft, Lyric, Hendrix, and Brio immediately approached Bodana and Hinata. The group got along well, considering their rich bringing up. Meanwhile, Delphine and Cassius approached Zora and Noah. Although the group of tributes had a hard time understanding each other, and so did the group of mentors, they still managed to get along well. As the group continued to talk, Hinata brought Bodana, Lyric, Hendrix, and Brio over to the TV in order to continue watching the reapings. As they watched the reapings for District 15B, the career tributes saw some career alliance potential in the 18-year-old boy named Cardiac. The 13-year-old girl named Fibula was a little less of a contender for the career alliance, though. As the District 15B tributes hopped onto the hovercraft, the careers immediately jumped into action. Meanwhile, the tributes from Districts X and 19 were also approaching Cardiac and Fibula. As the two converging parties met, a dangerous standoff occurred. The mentors stood ready to separate the tributes, while the District 15B tributes stood right in the center of the careers and the smart districts. Lyric stared down Alchiella, anger in her eyes, until Angel, victor of the 1010th Hunger Games, stepped up as the female mentor for District 15B, and stated that the tributes would be allying with the smarter districts, which actually made Cardiac and Fibula mad, as this meant that they couldn't choose for themselves. Eventually, Angel would step down and let the tributes make their own decision. With that, the standoff went back into effect, both parties staring each other down intimidatingly. Cardiac and Fibula both seemed to consider joining both alliances before making their choice. Angel and Lumen, victor of the 779th Hunger Games, thought their tributes would stick together, but that wasn't the case, as the careers got what they wanted, Cardiac approaching the careers, whilst Fibula approached the smart districts. This also made things worse between the two groups, making the tributes from Districts 14A, 15A, and 17 extremely nervous. Meanwhile, on the mainland of Panem, District 21's reaping wasn't going according to plan. Many of the youths were very angry, and some even threw punches at the peacekeepers. As the many rebellions were quelled by peacekeepers and District 18 militiamen, the District 21 reapings were set to start. When Alicia and Finnick stepped onto the stage, cheers were heard throughout the capital as Districts 2 and 4. Meanwhile, the hovercraft from Europe was dead silent, minus Cassius and Beatty. In the reaping enclosures were mostly younger tributes, although there were still some older ones in the reaping enclosure. Most possible tributes were brunette, some hair containing blonde highlights. As Alicia stepped over to the female reaping bowl, everyone in Panam watched with bated breath. Alicia would look around at all the youths before reaching into the reaping bowl and picking out a pristine white piece of paper and reading out the name of 16-year-old B. Bickerton. As B heard her name, her heart skipped a beat. Although this district was a career district, many still feared the games, B being one of them. Meanwhile, screams were heard throughout the reaping enclosures about how unfair and rigged these reapings were, as B was one of the most popular people in the district and also one of the most rebellious. As B stepped out into the aisle, her light brown hair blew in the wind as B took a deep breath. As she walked down the aisle, many of her close friends either cried for her or patted her on the back as a sign of respect. As B made it to the stage, she looked around at all her friends and took a deep breath before walking onto the stage. She then reached out hesitantly and shook hands with Alicia. Alicia took a long, hard look at her tribute this year and sighed. B wasn't much in terms of strength, but Alicia could play the angle that she was quite the looker. B was absolutely stunning, in fact, being the prettiest girl in the district. Eventually, B stepped back to her position against the wall behind Alicia and Finnick. Finnick then stepped up to the male reaping bowl and picked out an off-white piece of paper. Finnick then read out the name of 18-year-old Buzz Einstein. When Buzz heard his name, he put a smirk on his face. He had been part of a large-scale rebellion within the district before the reintroduction of the games. He was a very strong young man with many weaponry skills, seeing as he's been training in the training academy since the games were reintroduced. As Buzz stepped into the aisle, girls stared at his muscles. He would smirk at these girls and flex his muscles for both the girls and the cameras, causing Capital Girls to fawn over him as well. Meanwhile, on the stage, B got more and more nervous about her chances in the games as the closer Buzz got to the stage. When Buzz got onto the stage, he winked at B before shaking hands with Alicia and Finnick, before taking his position against the wall right next to B, who was actively trying not to faint from nervousness. As Buzz and B were escorted towards the train, Buzz whispered to B that he didn't mean to scare her if he had done so, saying that he had to look strong so he wouldn't be targeted. B would nod in understanding at this, although her mind was still running wild with thoughts and fears. One thing I neglected to mention before was that the train was considerably longer for the new Hunger Games files. Each district got 6 of their own train carriages, including 1 carriage where the tributes and mentors hang out and strategize, and 5 carriages where each tribute and mentor would sleep. In the very back of the train is 1 large carriage where all the tributes and mentors could hang out together. This cart, in the back, would come to be known as the common cart. As B, Buzz, Finnick, and Alicia got onto the train, they entered into the common cart where the tributes from District 0 were waiting. District 0 was the only smart district who had no idea that District 5 had become a career district, and so they were waiting on the District 5 tributes. B and Buzz actually found themselves getting along with the tributes from District 0 and 13. Deimos from 0 and B even flirted with each other for a while. After Districts 6 and 9 were picked up, the train was on the way to District 7. Deimos, Celeste from 0, Buzz, B, Jupiter, victor of the 779th Hunger Games, Uni, victor of the 1011th Hunger Games, Finnick and Alicia stayed in the common carts with each other, while Tyra from 6, Zurich from 6, Oatly from 9, Sickle from 9, Ada from 13, Callie from 13, Acheron from 13, Italia, Michigan, victor of the 1003rd Hunger Games, Yonder Blue Ford, victor of the 974th Hunger Games, Cutley Travis, victor of the 956th Hunger Games, Bryce Ziti, victor of the 1018th Hunger Games, Sydney Vector, victor of the 1020th Hunger Games, and Miles Fission, victor of the 989th Hunger Games, go into their district-specific carts. As the train got to District 7, Brazil Woodard, victor of the 980th Hunger Games, Mariko Taiga, victor of the 1017th Hunger Games, Zingana from 7, and Zacharias from 7 got onto the train and immediately approached B, Buzz, Alicia, and Finnick. Alicia and Finnick immediately broke into conversation with Brazil and Mariko, although B and Buzz were reluctant to break away from Celeste and Deimos. This reluctancy annoyed the Sevens, as they wanted to talk to B and Buzz in order to get them into the Career Alliance. As the train continued its journey, 8 more career districts in a row were picked up before the District 8 group. This whole time, B and Buzz continued to talk to Celeste and Deimos. This group was getting closer and closer as the train ride continued. The group would even stay up all night some nights in order to continue chatting. Eventually, the train would make it to District 3. Electra Sharp, victor of the 969th Hunger Games, Jaden Alder, victor of the 1002nd Hunger Games, Dottie from 3, and Mac from 3 got onto the train and saw the Zeros chatting with the 21s. This wasn't normal, as the District 0 tributes would usually talk to the District 3 tributes. Electra and Jaden would also notice that Alana from 5 and AC from 5 talking with the careers. It was at this point that Electra and Jaden realized they might have to make some changes to the Smart District Alliance. As Electra and Jaden were thinking, Celeste, Deimos, Uni, Jupiter, B, and Buzz approached Dottie and Mac. The group would talk for a while, with Electra and Jaden stating the truth that B and Buzz were from a career district, and even had career mentors. But B and Buzz both stated that they didn't truly trust the careers and wanted to be in an alliance with people who reflected their beliefs. The way B and Buzz worded this made the 0s and 3s pause for a moment to discuss. B and Buzz seemed a bit worried until Celeste, Deimos, Dottie, and Mac all smiled at B and Buzz before formally accepting B and Buzz into the Smart District Alliance. It was later revealed by Jaden in a post-games interview that this move was made because the tributes were actually smart, but also well-trained for the games and could be an asset in the games. As the train arrived in the capital, before they could get off the train, Jazz from 14B and New from 14B pulled B and Buzz to the side, threatening them that if they don't kill off the useless tributes from Districts 0 and 3, they'd be the Career Alliance's first targets in the arena. Jazz, New, and the other careers thought this would scare B and Buzz into submission, but B and Buzz stood firm in their beliefs, stating that they were gonna stick with the 0s and 3s, and that they didn't care if they would be targeted in the arena, adding that they'd rather keep their morality intact than switch to the side of the careers. As B and Buzz stepped off the train, Celeste, Deimos, Uni, Jupiter, Dottie, Mac, Electra, and Jaden made it evident they heard Bee and Buzz's conversation with Jazz and knew by giving Bee and Buzz reassuring smiles and respectful nods. Deimos even gave the pair a thumbs up. As the usual Capitol crowd crowded around the tributes, Bee and Buzz stuck close to Celeste, Deimos, Dottie, and Mac, while the mentors watched from the sidelines. The smart tributes were asked questions about why Celeste, Deimos, Dottie, and Mac accepted a career district into their alliance, to which they replied by stating that the Capitol would see as soon as the events on the train went live on TV. The secrets and suspense made Capitol viewers excited and ready to see the train footage live. As more Capitolites crowded around the group, Celeste, Dottie, and Bee posed for pictures together, looking absolutely stunning in dresses of their district colors, Celeste wearing a white one, Dottie wearing a bright yellow one, and Bee wearing a dark yellow one. This would attract more Capitolites to the trio of girls, along with their brunette hair and Celeste's shyness. As more pictures get taken, Celeste blushes more and more, making Capitolites swoon. Deimos, Mac, and Buzz would also took pictures together. Looking like some strong competition, the trio would flex their muscles for the camera, an idea given to Deimos and Mac by Buzz. The trio attracted Capitol photographers with their muscles and brunette hair. As Alicia and Finnick tried to bond with Uni, Jupiter, Electra, and Jaden, Capitolites continued taking pictures of Celeste, Dottie, Bee, Deimos, Mac, and Buzz. After a little while, Uni, Jupiter, Electra, Jaden, Alicia, and Finnick grabbed Celeste, Deimos, Dottie, Mac, Bee, and Buzz and escorted the group to one of the 5 limos outside of the station. Meanwhile, as the European hovercraft made it to the Capitol, the tributes got out in order of their district number, lowest to highest. First off of the hovercraft were the mentors of each district: Callista, Corinne, Kaylee, William, Renee, Gabrielle, Angel, Lumen, Clara, Wolfgang, Zora, Noah, Petra, Beatty, Delphine, and Cassius. First tributes to exit the hovercraft were Desiree, Angela, and Bram. As the group from District X exited the hovercraft, Capitolites crowded around the tributes. This trio were fan favorites from back when they competed in the games. Desiree and Angela were Corinne's district partners back in the 181st Hunger Games, and Bram was Callista's district partner in the 180th Hunger Games. As more tributes stepped out of the hovercraft, Mary, Sterling, Stephanie, Salim, Fibula, Cardiac, Bodana, Hinata, Lyric, Hendrix, and Brio got crowded around the most. Meanwhile, Mariposa and Beetle went straight over to Desiree, Angela, and Bram. The group got a few pictures together. Even though they didn't have many Capitolites crowded around them, they did have a few. When Fibula came over to Mariposa, Beetle, Desiree, Angela, and Bram, the numbers of Capitolites crowding around them went up as people were still interested in Fibula. The group of smart tributes did amazing greeting Capitol TV personnel and answering their questions. Meanwhile, Cardiac, Bodana, Hinata, Lyric, Hendrix, and Brio stuck together and took pictures together with the Capitol children, posing with toy swords and even sword fighting the children with these toy swords. Cardiac didn't do as well as the other careers in his sword fights, but he did manage to impress Capitolites with his skill. After a little while, the mentors managed to separate their tributes from the Capitolites and bring them to one of 3 limos outside the airport. It was actually the perfect amount to split the alliances among limos, which was technically the point. The European Alliance was in one limo, the Career Alliance was in another, and the Smart Districts were in another. Eventually, all 8 limos made it back to the accommodation tower. As Celeste, Deimos, Dottie, Mac, Bee, and Buzz got out of their limo, they approached Desiree, Angela, Bram, Fibula, Mariposa, and Beetle. The group from the mainland was reluctant to accept Desiree, Angela, and Bram at first until Fibula, Mariposa, and Beetle said they wouldn't join the Smart Districts if the trio from District X wasn't accepted, causing the mainland Smart District tributes to agree to let them join. Meanwhile, the Careers took in Cardiac, along with Oatly from 9 and Sickle from 9, without much thought. Oatly and Sickle were surprisingly strong for tributes from District 9. The Careers gave Cardiac and the Career tributes from the European hovercraft the rundown on what happened with Bee and Buzz. This caused Badonna to call Bee and Buzz traitors, while Lyric, Hendrix, and Brio nodded in fake understanding. As the Careers talked, Lyric, Hendrix, and Brio stayed silent, only nodding in understanding every now and then, and only interjecting when absolutely necessary. The trio from District 20 didn't really blame the District 21 tributes for not wanting to be in the Career Alliance. Even Lyric was getting drained. After a couple hours of chatting, Lyric told the others in the Alliance that her birthday was the next day. This excited many of the other Careers, some even wishing Lyric a happy birthday. Lyric then stated that the only thing she wanted for her 15th birthday was that all the tributes would come together to celebrate. The Careers would look between each other before begrudgingly agreeing to this. As the tributes were all taken to their separate accommodation rooms, Lyric walked with a new sort of pep in her step. Meanwhile, Hendrix and Brio weren't 100% sure about how this birthday party for Lyric would turn out. As the night continued, the Careers spread throughout the accommodation tower to invite the other tributes to Lyric's birthday. The other tributes from the European hovercraft were easy to convince, while the tributes from Districts 0, 3, 6, 8, and 13 were a little harder to convince, but they actually agreed as well. As the day turned into night, the Career tributes, the Outlier tributes, the Peacekeepers helped each other set up the party. As the group helped set up the party, they surprisingly got along. Jokes were made and laughs were shared throughout the lobby of the tribute accommodation tower. As Hendrix and Brio worked together on a playlist for Lyric's birthday, the other tributes from the European districts helped out too, making music suggestions and even asking if they could do some live performances. Tributes from Districts 0, 13, 16, and 21 also asked this question to Hendrix and Brio, and the pair agreed, being some of the only Careers who didn't still think Bee and Buzz were traitors. As Lyric woke up the next day, Delphine and Cassius were there to wish Lyric a happy birthday. Although Delphine and Cassius wished her a happy birthday, Lyric still felt forgotten by the other tributes, until Delphine and Cassius took Lyric onto the balcony overlooking the lobby of the accommodation tower. Lyric looked down and saw the party set up below. A smile grew across Lyric's face as she saw it. Just then, the other tributes and mentors from all the other districts jumped out from hiding spots in the setup below and yelled surprise in unison. Lyric squealed in excitement, pulling Delphine and Cassius into a tight hug before running to the elevator and using it to get down to the ground floor, jumping up and down in excitement the whole ride down. making the other tributes and mentors smile and laugh. For a moment, the tributes and mentors have forgotten what they were in the capital for. Even Celestia Snow, victor of the 1000th Hunger Games, Benedictus Highbottom, victor of the 2nd Rebellion Games, Atala from the capital, Nereus from the capital, and Nero from the capital have forgotten momentarily. This party established a trust between all the tributes and mentors, and a happiness that lasted hours after the party. Deimos and Mac even impressed the tributes with their breakdancing abilities during the party. Bram and Grove from 11 rapped together, Zurich from 6 and Mina from 12 performed a cover of a love song from the Old World, originally written by Bruno Mars and Lady Gaga, called Die With A Smile, and Sickle and Albert performed a cover of Die For You by The Siege. The happiness of the party wouldn't be short-lived, as many of the tributes met up in District 20's accommodation room to keep the party going. Nero and Nereus, twin brothers from the capital, would bring Cards Against Humanity, and the large group would have fun playing that for a majority of the night. As midnight fell, however, the other tributes had to go so they could all get some sleep. It was at that point that the reality of why the tributes and mentors were there hit them again, and the tributes and mentors fell asleep with a bittersweet feeling in their stomachs as they wondered what the next day would bring. The next day would come, and the tributes and mentors would be woken up nice and early, at 5 a.m. to be exact, meaning that most tributes and mentors only had 5 hours of sleep. In fact, William was so angry about this that he had begun to cry. Kaylee, Mary from 14A, and Sterling from 14A begged peacekeepers to stay with William and take care of him. To the surprise of most people who saw this, the peacekeepers actually allowed this to happen, although it was revealed later on that this was mostly because the peacekeepers thought it would give the tributes from 14A a disadvantage. As the groggy tributes and mentors stepped into separate limos, an announcement came that the limos would be taking the tributes and mentors to the arena in order for the arena to be shown to them. This confused many tributes and mentors as the limos took off. The only mentors this didn't confuse were Yonder, Jupiter, and Brazil, as they had a theory on what the arena was going to be, considering they had all won in this same arena many years ago. As the limos arrived outside of an entrance to a newly rebuilt amphitheater, Yonder, Jupiter, and Brazil's theories were proven correct, as the other tributes and mentors stepped out of the limos in awe of the outside of the arena. Yonder, Jupiter, and Brazil were wary of it. The tributes and mentors all stepped into the arena, and an intense sense of worry and dread filled them all. They looked around, knowing that this would be the last place a lot of them would ever see, not knowing how soon it would come. Just then, a sound was heard, a loud bang, almost like an explosion or a gun going off. Just then, a scream coming from Stephanie broke through the silence as more loud noises were heard. The arena was actively blowing up around them. Explosions sent tributes and debris flying as many male tributes and mentors dove on top of their female counterparts in order to protect them. Small explosions occurred around both sides of the arena until they reached the middle of the back of the arena, causing Just then, an even bigger explosion occurred, knocking many tributes and mentors unconscious and killing others. As Jaden shot awake, his eyes immediately darted around rapidly, trying to find Electra and their tributes. He looked to his left and found Lapis, dousing flames with his jacket. Jaden immediately took his jacket off and ran over to help. As the boys put the flames out, they saw the burned up bodies of Aurora and Charcoal. Lapis and Jaden would look at each other before hearing a blood-curdling scream nearby, seeing Kingsley, Lapis's older sister, running around while on fire. Lapis and Jaden immediately ran after Kingsley, swinging their jackets at Kingsley, trying to douse the flames. As the boys ran after Kingsley, that's when Jaden saw Elektra's dead body, draped over Celeste's dead body. This sight caused Jaden to pause, staring at Elektra and Celeste's bodies in horror. Just then, Lapis's distraught scream would tear Jaden out of his trance. Jaden's eyes dart over to Lapis as he cries over his dead sister. It turned out that while Jaden was distracted, Kingsley had collapsed and succumbed to the flames, her screams going silent. Jaden ran over to Lapis and hugged him as he cried. Eventually, peacekeepers and medics came into the arena in order to help the injured tributes and get the survivors out. Jaden didn't give the peacekeepers any problems when leaving, going outside to get some burns checked by medics. Meanwhile, Lapis was hauled out, kicking and screaming, crying as he was separated from his sister's dead body. A few moments after the explosions, Callista's eyes slowly fluttered open. She heard a low, annoying ringing in her ears as she slowly sat up and looked around. Her eyes immediately landed on the dead body of Clay Alford, victor of the 954th Hunger Games, who had dove on top of Callista to protect her. Callista's heart immediately raced quickly as she looked around, trying to find her fellow mentors, and Uni, the girl that Callista had fallen for during the party. She heard a female screaming nearby, behind her, and quickly turned to see Kingsley Hydra, victor of the 1007th Hunger Games, running around on fire, frantically flailing to try and put the fire out, as Lapis Hydra, victor of the 1014th Hunger Games, and Jaden Alder chased after her with their jackets, also trying to put the fire out. Callista then looked to her left and saw Corinne on the ground, deep wounds in his legs, looking as if Corinne's legs would fall off if they dragged him the wrong way. She then heard a pained grunt from behind her. She whipped her head around to see Jupiter crawling towards her, pointing backwards at Uni's barely conscious body. Callista screamed and stood up, running over to Uni. When she arrived by Uni's side, she took Uni into her arms. Uni smiled up at Callista, and Callista surveyed Uni's wounds, seeing the huge piece of rubble impaling Uni's stomach. Callista began crying and tried to remove the piece of rubble, but Uni stopped her, stating that it wasn't a good idea to remove the rubble from her stomach, before adding that it was too late for her anyways. This made Callista cry harder, holding Uni's body close to her. "Please don't go," Callista would mutter against Uni. As peacekeepers and medics rushed into the arena to save tributes and mentors, Uni's last words to Callista were that she loved her, before Uni lost consciousness and died in Callista's arms. Losing Uni was like a stab in Callista's heart, and she let out a loud, agonized scream, letting all the nearby tributes and mentors know exactly what had just happened. Eventually, peacekeepers and medics made it to Callista's side and pulled her away from Uni, only making Callista's screams and cries louder. Meanwhile, as Brio awoken, he looked to his left where Hendrix had been and saw Hendrix gripping his left eye, or at least where his left eye should have been. As Hendrix removed his hand from his left eye socket to show cardiac, Brio saw that Hendrix didn't have a left eye. Brio screamed and immediately jumped up, looking around at all the dead and wounded tributes and mentors. Brio then looked against the wall where Lyric had been examining a vending machine to see if she could get a snack. He saw the vending machine but didn't see Lyric. Just then, a scream from Guava from 11 snapped him back into reality. As Brio looked in the direction of Guava's scream, he saw something he never expected to see. Up against the back wall was Lyric. Lyric was slumped in a seated position, her forehead completely gone, and a trail of blood leading from Lyric's limp body to the culprit, one of the springs from the vending machine Lyric had been inspecting. This realization that Lyric was dead made Brio scream and look around frantically. He saw dead bodies burning, blood everywhere, tributes and mentors holding injured body parts, and tributes and mentors from some of the better off districts checking on the survivors. He heard screams and cries all around him tears clouded Brio's vision. As peacekeepers and medics came into the arena, Brio lost consciousness. When Desiree woke up, she looked to her left where her allies had been and saw Bee and Buzz's dead bodies, their limbs tangled together. Meanwhile, she saw Mariposa and Beetle's barely conscious bodies, Fibula checking on their wounds, trying not to puke as she saw Mariposa's missing leg and Beetle's missing arm and majorly wounded leg. Dottie had a huge cut in her forehead from shrapnel, being checked by Clara. Mac was fine and actively looking around for Electra and Jaden. Deimos was crying over the dead body of Celeste, and Angela also lost an arm. Finally, she saw it. Bram laying on the ground, still unconscious, bleeding heavily. Desiree ran over to Bram's unconscious body and tried to apply pressure to Bram's wound. Just then, Cardiac ran over and took over the duties of keeping pressure. Desiree asked Cardiac why he cared so much, to the point Cardiac said that he cared about the young boy. As peacekeepers and medics came to get tributes and mentors to safety, Cardiac and Desiree were separated from Bram, screaming and kicking. Cardiac even stated that he needed to go back in there to keep pressure on Bram's wound, but the peacekeepers and medics didn't listen to him. As the tributes and mentors were taken back to the accommodation tower, the death toll was evident. The amount of dead or majorly injured tributes and mentors became evident to the survivors. After a little while, Kaylee, William, Mary, and Sterling exited their accommodation room after hearing commotion from the lobby. As they saw tributes crying and still mentally scarred from what had happened, Kaylee, Mary, and Sterling asked what had happened and why there were so few tributes returning. To which Brio replied that the arena was bombed and that many tributes and mentors had died in the attack. This scared the group from 14A, but they were also glad that they weren't there. The group quickly ran to the elevator, William in Kaylee's arms. When they got down to the lobby, the group was hugged by the survivors from Districts 15A and 17. The group from 14A let the other groups of tributes and mentors from the European District Alliance cry on their shoulders. Just then, peacekeepers and medics came into the accommodation tower to announce the dead and announce that a funeral would be held the next day for the dead, and all that would be able to were allowed to attend the funeral. With that, peacekeepers forced tributes and mentors back to their accommodation rooms and were told that they couldn't visit each other tonight, but they would be allowed the next day and up until they go into the arena. That night, crying and screams were heard throughout the accommodation tower as tributes and mentors coped with the losses from their districts. Although they weren't allowed to visit each other, some tributes broke this rule. This group of rule breakers included Fibula and Cardiac, who went to the District X accommodation room in order to comfort Desiree after hearing about the death of Bram. The next day, all the tributes and mentors attended the funeral, including a few of the hospitalized mentors, Jupiter and Susan Twix, victor of the 1002nd Hunger Games. There was still no word on Renata Beltran, victor of the 940th Hunger Games, or Phoenix conditions. Corinne was fitted with prosthetics, and Jupiter was put in a wheelchair after having lost both of his legs during the bombing. That day, a funeral was held for 51 tributes and mentors. 51 cannons sounded, and everyone cried for the losses. The surviving tributes and mentors from Districts 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 10, 11, 12, 14B, 18, and 20 all gave salutes to the dead, while others cried and their bodies shook with fear and sadness. As the tributes and mentors returned to their accommodation rooms, one question lingered in the air. Who caused this? The districts all had different ideas. The surviving tributes and mentors from Districts 2 and 18 thought it was the tributes from District 13 who had did it, in order to remove some strong competition to start another rebellion. Meanwhile, the outlier districts and District 13 themselves thought it was one of the more military-oriented districts, 2, 16, and 18, in order to remove some of the strong competition. Finally, the European districts thought that the capital had done it, in order to remove some hated competition in the capital before the game started, and also to split allegiances, which was working. That night, the tributes took action. The outliers and most of the European districts went to District 13's accommodation room in order to protect the survivors from District 13, while the tributes from District 14A and Kaylee went to the capital accommodation room, and the survivors of Districts 2 and 18 went to the District 13 room, not expecting any resistance. Anger flowed through everyone's veins as they made their silent advances towards each other. At the capital accommodation room, Celestia sat alone, crying over the loss of Benedictus, Atala, Nero, and Nereus. Just then, Kaylee, Mary, and Sterling burst into Celestia's room, anger written all over their faces. Celestia jumped up and grabbed a knife from the nearby knife holder, ready to protect herself. Kaylee advanced first, quickly getting stabbed in the heart by Celestia. This caused Mary to scream, and Sterling quickly grabbed a decorative sword off of the wall and advanced towards Celestia. Celestia swung her knife at Sterling, but he blocked the attack and with the decorative sword, knocking the knife out of Celestia's hand. Sterling then rolled across the ground, picked up the knife, standing up, turning around, and stabbing Celestia in the heart, all in one motion. As Celestia fell to the ground, Sterling ran over to Mary and hugged her tight before ushering her out of the room. Meanwhile, at the District 13 accommodation room, Callista, Corinne, Desiree, and Achiella went into the accommodation room in order to warn Sydney, Ada, and Callie about the impending attack. As Yuki Vita, victor of the 1013th Hunger Games, Shale from 2, Zora, and Hinata arrived at the District 13 accommodation room, they were surprised to see a pretty large number of opposition. Even Cardiac was on the side of the District 13 survivors. Shale and Hinata immediately ran at Cardiac, calling him a traitor. As Shale and Hinata ran at Cardiac, Callista, Corinne, Desiree, Achiella, Sydney, Ada, and Callie exited the room, joining in on the fight. The fight became pretty big in a matter of seconds, weapons even beginning to get involved as Yuki, Shale, Zora, and Hinata took out knives that had been smuggled into the fight. Yuki didn't manage to kill anyone before being killed by Callista Yaroon. Fitting for the District X victor born in District 2 to take down a District 2 mentor. Shale managed to kill Jaden and Ada before being killed by Amelia. Zora managed to kill Deimos before being killed by Jupiter. Finally, Hinata managed to kill Sydney and Callie before being killed by Mariposa. After both fights subsided, peacekeepers came into the accommodation tower in order to separate the tributes and mentors, escorting them back to their rooms. It was at that point that the peacekeepers decided not to let the tributes and mentors visit anybody. A conversation was also held between peacekeepers and the president in order to make the games start early this year, in order to get this over with, to which the president agreed, and it was decided that the games would start the next day. No tribute parade, no training, and no interviews would occur this year. The next day, the surviving tributes and mentors were woken up very early in order to be taken back to the arena. The tributes and mentors weren't even in the same limo as their allies. Instead, the tributes and mentors were split throughout the limos based on the district they came from. In the District X limo, it was silent. Callista and Corinne just sighed and looked out of their windows of the limo, avoiding eye contact with Desiree and Achiella. Meanwhile, Desiree and Achiella also avoided eye contact with Callista and Corinne, looking out of their windows. The recent events had made the tributes and mentors from the district hollow, and none of them wanted to say goodbye, knowing this might be the last time Callista and Corinne would see Desiree and Achiella alive. Meanwhile, in the District 19 limo, Mariposa and Beetle looked at the empty seats across the way from them, neither of them knowing what to do now that Beatty and Petra were dead. The limo was also filled with silence, and neither tribute tried to break it. Finally, in the District 20 limbo, Brio and Hendrix were dangerously silent, as an intense scowl on both of their faces. Delphine and Cassius tried to get the pair to talk, but they didn't say a word. Instead, Delphine and Cassius were stuck in their thoughts as they looked at the empty seat where Lyric would have been. As the tributes got out of their limos, they were held at gunpoint until they got into the arena. At that point, the only tributes to make it into the arena were Desiree from X, Achiella from X, Dottie from 3, Mac from 3, Xander from 4, Zingana from 7, Zacharias from 7, Emily from 8, Frida from 10, Guava from 11, Mary from 14A, Sterling from 14A, Jazz from 14B, New from 14B, Stephanie from 15A, Fibula from 15B, Cardiac from 15B, Emilia from 17, Mariposa from 19, Beetle from 19, Hendrix from 20, and Brio from 20. As the tributes stepped into position, they realized that the rubble was cleaned up, but the dead bodies were kept in the arena. Many tributes screamed as they realized this and looked around, trying to find a place where they wouldn't be seeing a dead body, but all the tributes and mentors who had died on the way to the hospital, and all the tributes and mentors who had died in the fight the night before, were propped up in seating positions up in the stands, as if watching the games occur. As Desiree and Achiella saw Bram's body up in the stands, they screamed and fell to their knees, beginning to cry. Desiree even screamed at the nearest camera, asking the Capitol why would they do this. Meanwhile, Mariposa and Beetle jumped a little at Desiree and Achiella's screams. Their eyes snapped to where Desiree and Achiella were looking, and their hearts fell at the sight of Bram's dead body in the stands. Beetle glared at a nearby camera, showing his immense disdain for the Capitol and the fact that they kept the bodies in the arena, just to seemingly trigger some PTSD from the bombing. Finally, Hendrix and Brio couldn't pry their eyes off of Lyric's dead body. Hendrix couldn't help but tear up as he just stared at the dead body of the girl who had just turned 15 the day before her death. As the tributes looked around, a peacekeeper fired a gun into the air, marking the start of the games. For a moment, nobody moved. Everyone was frozen in their positions as their eyes darted around the arena looking at all the dead. Just then, another gunshot rang out. The tributes looked around frantically before seeing Emily's dead body fall to the ground, a bullet wound in the back of her head. The eyes of the tributes widened as they saw this, and immediately Brio ran at the pile of weapons, grabbing a sword. He then ran at Amelia and decapitated her, making Amelia the first official kill of the games performed by a tribute in the arena. As Amelia's head fell to the floor, the other tributes broke into action. Some tributes, including many career tributes, sprinted off into the tunnels as Xander, Zacharias, New, and Hendrix met up with Brio at the weapon pile. Xander grabbed a trident, Zacharias grabbed an axe, New grabbed a spear, and Hendrix grabbed a knife, grouping up with Brio in order to defend the weapon pile. The first tribute to risk an adventure to the weapon pile was Cardiac. He ran towards the weapon pile. Even with a missing foot, he still was pretty quick on his foot, but not quick enough. In no time at all, Xander threw his trident into Cardiac's heart. Just then, Fibula ran in and grabbed the trident before retreating back into the tunnels. This caused Zacharias, New, Hendrix, and Brio to just glare at Xander and shake their heads slowly. Meanwhile, when Fibula made it back to the other smart districts, she gave the trident to Desiree before stating that that was the only weapon she could access from the weapon pile. Desiree would nod and take the trident. Angela, Dottie, Mac, Mariposa, and Beetle were slightly jealous that Desiree received the weapon, but they understood that it was mostly due to the fact that Desiree was in the best shape out of all of them. Angela would ask Fibula what happened to Cardiac, to which Fibula would reply that Cardiac gave his life for the cause. The group then bowed their heads in silence, mourning their fallen comrades. Back at the weapon pile, an argument had already arisen between the career boys. It was revealed that the boys had secret, private conversations without the other careers in order to turn on the other careers. Two things went wrong with their plan. Brio killed the wrong person, and Xander lost his weapon. The boys weren't mad at Brio for his mistake, but they definitely were all mad at Xander. Now there was another armed tribute outside of their alliance, and Xander was unarmed. As Xander argued that he could just grab a replacement weapon, Hendrix instead said that Xander wouldn't be able to do this before stabbing Xander in the head. As Xander's body fell, silence fell over the boys again. As the boys nodded in respect to Hendrix, they lost sight of their goal of protecting the weapon pile. When the boys weren't looking, Stephanie ran to the weapon pile and grabbed a scythe, stabbing Zacharias in the back before sprinting away. As Zacharias fell to his knees, Hendrix and Brio ran at Stephanie, while New stayed with Zacharias. As Hendrix and Brio caught up with Stephanie, Hendrix tackled Stephanie to the ground and held her down as Brio took over. Brio would put Stephanie through minutes of pure torture, stabbing Stephanie in spots that weren't deadly as Stephanie begged for her life. Hendrix and Brio let the girl bleed out on the floor, pinned and begging for her life for about half an hour. When Hendrix and Brio got back to Zacharias and New, however, Zacharias had also succumbed to his injuries, but they also saw another dead body on the pile, as New had killed Zingana while protecting Zacharias. The boys all sighed and took their places back at the weapon pile. All these events left the games with 15 tributes left after the bloodbath. Desiree from X, Angela from X, Dottie from 3, Mac from 3, Frida from 10, Guava from 11, Mary from 14A, Sterling from 14A, Jazz from 14B, New from 14B, Fibula from 15B, Mariposa from 19, Beetle from 19, Hendrix from 20, and Brio from 20. With Desiree, New, Hendrix, and Brio being the only armed tributes. Because of all the death before the games and during the bloodbath, no one expected the games to last past sundown. So, when the sun went down, everyone had to start strategizing about how they would sleep. Meanwhile, New, Hendrix, and Brio talked about whether they should wander through the tunnels in order to find sleeping tributes and kill them. They later decide to do exactly that. As night fell, tributes started to fall asleep, while New, Hendrix, and Brio split up to search the tunnels. As Hendrix searched, he came across the career girls, Frida, Guava, and Jazz. All three of them were unarmed and weak after a lack of eating. This made the trio easy kills for Hendrix, who killed Jazz first, then Frida, then Guava. Meanwhile, as Brio searched, he found the unarmed pair from 14A, Mary and Sterling. As Mary and Sterling slept, Brio slowly approached the pair. As the pair continued to sleep, Brio stabbed Mary first in the heart. He then stabbed Sterling in the spine before stabbing him again in the head. Meanwhile, with the Smart District Alliance, Desiree stayed awake and at camp, while Angela, Dottie, Mac, Fibula, Mariposa, and Beetle went off to the weapon pile in order to get more weapons, as they figured the career boys would be out. While Angela, Dottie, Mac, Fibula, Mariposa, and Beetle were at the weapon pile, they each searched around. Dottie would pick up Zacharias' axe. Just as Dottie picked up the axe, New had come back to the weapon pile and saw Dottie and Mac at the weapon pile, while Angela, Fibula, Mariposa, and Beetle were in the shadows. At first, New ran at Mac. As New approached Mac, Dottie prepared to throw the axe from the side. Dottie lifted the axe above her head, aiming it as New got closer and closer to Mac. As New was about to strike, Dottie threw the axe. As the axe flew through the air, New looked in the direction of the axe, his eyes widening as he saw the axe coming straight for his head. New went to block the axe with his spear, but he wasn't fast enough. Just before he was able to bring his spear up to block the axe embedded itself firmly in New's head. As New's body fell to the ground, Mac picked up his spear and grabbed Dottie, running away from the weapon pile with Angela, Fibula, Mariposa, and Beetle. The group would run through the tunnels, unknowingly running past Hendrix and Brio. Eventually, the remaining career boys would reunite and decide to search the remaining tunnels together. Meanwhile, the Smart Districts also reunited with each other, Desiree pulling Angela into a hug. As the career boys roamed the tunnels, they came across the Smart Districts Alliance camp. There were still 7 tributes left in the Smart District Alliance, while there were only 2 career boys left. Hendrix whispered to Brio that he knew they shouldn't have listened to Zacharias, while all Brio could do was think about a way to take down the competition. Meanwhile, the Smart Tributes had no idea the career boys were so close. Desiree, Dottie, and Mac were the only armed tributes and stayed awake the rest of the night to guard the camp. Since only 3 tributes were armed and there were 4 tunnels to where they were, Desiree, Dottie, and Mac all had their backs to the tunnel that Hendrix and Brio were hidden in. As the trio of armed tributes were distracted, Hendrix and Brio snuck up to the sleeping tributes. As Desiree, Dottie, and Mac were fighting to stay awake, Hendrix and Brio stabbed Mariposa and Fibula in the hearts. As this happened, Dottie was the first guard to fall asleep, unable to fight sleep anymore. As this happened, Brio approached Dottie's sleeping form, while Hendrix approached Beetle's sleeping form. As the pair of boys made it to their intended targets, they skillfully and stealthily slit the throats of the pair. As this occurred, Angela woke up nearby to Hendrix and almost screamed as she saw Hendrix slitting Beetle's throat. The only reason her scream didn't escape her lips was because Hendrix had noticed she woke up and stabbed her in the heart, only allowing a small whimper to escape Angela's lips. This was enough to snap Desiree and Mac out of their trances. Both tributes turn towards the career boys and see that they are now the only 4 tributes left. As the top 4 stared each other down, Mac reacted first. He threw a spear at Hendrix, causing Hendrix and Desiree to both snap into battle mode as well. Desiree threw her trident at Brio, while Hendrix threw his knife at Mac. As Brio dodges Desiree's trident, he runs at Desiree, tackling her to the ground. Meanwhile, neither Hendrix nor Mac were able to dodge each other's attacks. Hendrix getting hit by Mac's spear in the neck, and Mac getting hit in the head by Hendrix's knife. This left just Desiree and Brio as the final 2 tributes. Desiree manages to disarm Brio, pushing him off of her. As the pair stand, staring each other down, Desiree and Brio wish each other the best of luck before they start fighting. Brio told Desiree that she was a surprisingly skilled fighter and that others should look up to her. This would cause Desiree to smile and blush a little, thanking Brio before the pair ran at each other. To the surprise of the entire capital, Desiree tackled Brio to the ground, throwing punches at Brio. Brio manages to free his arms, beginning to block Desiree's punches. As the fight continued, Brio and Desiree fought for dominance and rolled around the tunnels, trading blows. Eventually, Brio is able to get the upper hand, slamming Desiree's head up against a rock. Desiree screamed out in pain as Brio picked up the rock and started bashing the rock against Desiree's face. The more he bashed the rock into Desiree's face, the more Desiree's face started to look disfigured. Brio continued to bash the rock against Desiree's skull, even after her pulse stopped. By the time Brio stopped, Desiree's face was completely skinned, and she had been dead for multiple minutes. After the games, Brio slowly stood up, his eyes wide as he dropped the rock, slowly backing away from Desiree's body. As he backed away from Desiree's body, mortified by what he had done, peacekeepers entered the arena to grab Brio. As Brio backed into one of the peacekeepers, he jumped a little and screamed, PTSD evident already in his actions. The peacekeepers would grab Brio and remove him from the arena. As they dragged him away, Brio remained unresponsive to the peacekeepers' questions in the hovercraft. In the hovercraft with the peacekeepers was a shared silence between Brio and the peacekeepers. Brio's eyes darted around the craft, still wide with horror. When the craft got to the tribute accommodation tower, Brio still wasn't calm. Immediately when he entered the tower, he saw the remnants of Lyric's birthday decorations, and he almost burst into tears as he saw it, remembering all the people who died before the games even occurred. The next day was Brio's victor's interview, and the beginning of his victory tour. He didn't talk much the night before with Delphine and Cassius, who tried to get him to talk. That day, Brio stood backstage, his head down and his hands folded, apparently praying to someone or something. For the first time since after the games, he seemed at peace. He wasn't fully at peace, but he was feeling a little better. Brio was wearing a nice black suit and a promise ring he was given by his girlfriend before leaving. As he walked out on the stage, pictures of the dead tributes were shown in the background of his interview. While stepping onto the stage, Brio took a moment to pause and salute the dead tributes. He held back his tears surprisingly well as he saw the pictures of Lyric, Hendrix, and Desiree scroll by. As Brio took his seat, Shauna Flickerman, the new interviewer, would start Brio's victory interview. Brio didn't speak much, opting to only nod, shake his head, or give short one-worded answers. This occurred throughout most of his interview until Shauna made a crude joke about Desiree. This caused Brio to shoot up from his seat, grabbing Shauna in a chokehold. He yelled at Shauna as peacekeepers went onto the stage to grab Brio. As peacekeepers pulled Brio off the stage, he yelled obscenities at Shauna in Spanish, also telling Shauna never to talk down on the dead ever again. Even as Brio was being forced through the doors out of the interview room, he still yelled at Shauna. After leaving the building where the interview took place, the peacekeepers forced Brio onto a hovercraft. By the time he was put into the hovercraft, he was back to being dangerously quiet. Even after Delphine and Cassius entered the hovercraft, Brio just stared down at the ground. Throughout Brio's victory tour, Brio was relatively silent, just reading cards given to him by Cassius in a very monotone voice. This occurred in every district except for his home district and District X. In these two districts, Brio ignored the cards given to him altogether and gave Lyric, Hendrix, and Desiree amazing eulogies. After his victory tour, Brio returned to District 20 and lived his life. Even though he had immense PTSD, Brio ended up living a relatively normal life in a relatively normal Victor's Village house. Eventually, Brio would marry his girlfriend, and the pair would end up having 10 kids together, 1 boy and 9 girls. All 10 of these kids would end up competing in future games, with them all getting in the top 10, and one of them even actually winning. So yeah, guys, that is the end of the first episode of Ashes of the Hunger Games, 2 Ashes in Blood. I hope you all enjoyed it. As I said in the post about this, the stuff before the games did happen, like, relatively quick, but, that was just to establish, like, why a lot of mentors aren't gonna be mentoring from here on, because I also thought those ideas would be sort of interesting to do. There will be more interesting ideas used in the later episodes of this series, and of course, you already know there's going to be interesting ideas used in the Ashes series as well. Just thought I'd say that. Again, just like I said in the intro, the next video posted will be the 231st through 240th Hunger Games in the Ashes files. And we'll switch between them. We'll keep switching between them. So, that is the end of today's video. I don't know when the next video will come out, but when it does, I'm sure y'all will enjoy it, just like you enjoy all my other Ashes episodes. I'm sure you will enjoy the next episode of the Ashes of the Hunger Games. There's a lot more smart victors in that one too. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed it. this first episode of Ashes of the Hunger Games to Ashes and Blood. I hope you guys will stay tuned for more of this series and Ashes. And as always, stay awesome. Goodbye, everybody.